Russia blocks Facebook and Instagram. Who's going to benefit from this the most? You might look at Facebook and say, you know, they are doing some weird things. They are allowing people to, I guess, post violent attacks on Russians, meaning like they're allowed to spew hate speech against Russians. So, as a Russian, right, especially someone who has nothing to do with what's going on in Ukraine, I would look at that and say, that's doesn't seem very fair. You're not allowed to have any hate speech on anyone else, but yet us Russians over here are getting the short end of the stick just because our government, which we don't have any control over, is now attacking another country. That seems a little weird. Imagine if they did that with the United States. Now, I guess we went into Iraq and Afghanistan at times before Facebook's inception, but imagine if that were the case for everyone, right? There'd be a lot of countries that would be banned if we were talking about powerful nations invading lesser nations. So for me, I look at it and I say, who's going to benefit from this? Obviously, Facebook isn't going to get a lot of benefit from it because they're missing out on their people, right? They're missing out on a big percentage and I don't know how many millions of people from Russia were using Facebook and Instagram, but they're going to have less people on their platform. But will it be detrimental to Russians? Most people will look at that. I would think most people would look at that situation and go, oh, that's very authoritarian. That's wrong. You shouldn't limit people's access to something like Facebook or Instagram because people want those things. They should be able to do what they want to do. But I look at it and I say, I don't know if it will actually hurt Russians in the long term. In the short term, I definitely think it will. But in the long term, Russians, we know, are very smart technologically. They're going to figure out a way to innovate. And it's not like they're not going to communicate. It's not like when this goes into action, they're not going to be able to communicate on other platforms. Like they're still going to be able to communicate on other platforms. But what if they create their own platform themselves? What if this allows for them to say, Facebook, a company that allows hate speech on certain things, doesn't allow it on other things. That's not right. You should be either none or all, right? They might come out with something and you can talk and you can say whatever you want. There's a lot of free speech on it. Or they can come out with another one and say, here's our idea. It's only positive vibes only. It's only going to be good stuff, right? They could innovate and do that. There are tons of other people that have talked about this because of what Facebook has been doing over the years, especially in regard to political posts and to different sorts of ideas being spread. They cancel certain ideas and they let other ideas run rampant. Well, who gets to decide, right? The people at Facebook? Well, why do they get to decide? Well, it's their company, so fair enough. But if people aren't liking what they're seeing from that, they don't like the direction that it's going, what do people do? They innovate, they make their own, they make something better, they make something more fair, they make something that makes sense to them. So what I think is going to happen is this is going to be a good thing for Russians in the long term. They're going to find other forms of communication, whether that be other forms of social media that are already around, and they're going to use that to the same effects that they would Facebook or Instagram, or they're going to innovate themselves. They're going to make their own, and it's going to be maybe not as successful as Facebook because Facebook's all over the world, but it will be, in their eyes, a good platform versus one that allows for certain things to happen and other things not to happen. So that's on one end. Now, I look at this, and most people, again, I mentioned, would look at it and say, this is authoritarian, this is negative, this is bad for the Russian people. But I actually kind of think it's the opposite. I look at it as a actual way of giving love to the Russian people. Because like I said, what did the Russian people do to deserve now the ability for other nations, people from all over, wherever they want, to be able to then attack them for something that their government is doing? They like most people aren't involved in their government. I would say that's I mean, most people aren't involved in the military operations of the government. I think a lot of people are actually involved in the government one way or the other, whether that be through a job or that be through the programs themselves or to getting money from the government. They're communicating with the government. We have to use the government, but most people aren't in the military inside your government. It's not like 90% of the nation works for the military. So when you have this military operation going on, and you have a population of people that are just doing this normal things that they do, and then now they're allowed to be attacked just because they're Russian, for no other reason than they're Russian and Russians are doing this one thing. It seems to me like that is unfair. And if I was in charge of Russia, I would see that as unfair, and I would look at that company, Facebook, Meta as they're called now, and I would look at them very skeptically and think, these people, they don't have our best interests at heart, and I want to cut ties with them. And an authoritarian, what do? They completely cut ties like they're doing now. So that's one way of doing it. I don't know if I would do that, but I would think along those same lines. Now, what's interesting about that is many people have been thinking this pre-Russia-Ukraine conflict. People have been looking at Facebook going, these people don't care not only about Russians, that wasn't even in the context, that wasn't even in the conversation. They were saying they don't care about their actual users. They care about a narrative that they want to push. They have certain things that they want to get across, or they have certain values that they're aligned with, and they want to push that. Instead of it just being a platform for people to communicate, they're going to move the conversation to the conversation that they want to have. And hey, they're free to do that. I believe that you cannot get mad at a company for acting in what they think of as their best interest. Now, we've seen with their stock and with their popularity, this is not in their best interest. They're actually shooting themselves in the foot. So when you see things like what they're doing with this Russia thing, they're shooting themselves in the foot. Like I said, this is going to suck for Facebook, but they're doing it themselves. It's not like this is coming out of anywhere else. It's not like Russia canceled Facebook and Instagram for no reason. They're doing it with their own set of reasons. But like I said, people have been thinking about this pre this Russian-Ukraine conflict, and this is only going to add more fuel to the fire and get more people like myself, who's neutral. I don't care what happens in those countries. We got enough problems in our own countries. In our own country, I got enough problems dealing with my own life. I don't need to get involved in this stuff. I talk about it a lot. I communicate a lot because it's happening, right? And I like to express my ideas, and I like to get people to get out of this one only thinking mindset and have different perspectives. So I like to share my perspective, but I don't get anything out of it. So with that being said, you see who's going to end up benefiting from this in the long term. And I think that the Russian people will end up benefiting in the long term because they'll see through some of these things and they'll be able to innovate or use other platforms. And Facebook, Instagram, they're going to suffer. It's not going to be good for them. They're going to either backtrack or they're going to have to figure out a new way to do things. And I think that that's already their plan. They're already moving into the metaverse and these other avenues because they think that that's the future, and more power to them. So again, that's my thoughts on what's happening with this Facebook and Instagram ban in Russia. Who knows what will end up happening? I can't predict the future, but those are my thoughts. And until next time, I'll see you then.